insanely bright green neon light going in a completely weird way through the sky, you know?
Hi everyone, this is Meghna from Indian Paranormal Society, and with me is my teammate Siddharth. And all the way from Bali is my very good friend Sasha Hart, who is our guest for today for our very first paranormal podcast called Paranormal and Spirituality. Sasha, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for your time. And let me give you a little brief about what who Sasha is. So he is a business and relationship coach for women. He is the co-founder of Yogi Lab, a father, a businessman, entrepreneur, and one of the most amazing guys that I've ever met. So thanks.
Wow.
So I won't dwell too much into the history of his life too much. We'll just hit on the spirituality part of it and just a little brief on his background. Sasha is from Germany, born in Berlin during the time when the wall was still up. And you were what, 2 years old when the wall was broken down? They broke the wall. So, how did all that influence you, change you in your perspective towards life and all?
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for this very sweet introduction. I think, like I was very lucky to grow up in this very transformative kind of time back in the days because Germany was divided into two countries, right? And then we got reunited. So I grew up in a culture, in a society, especially the East where I was from, which was very like it was communism. We had a chance to all of a sudden be free. So the people and the energy was like we want to be as free, as liberal, as creative, as vibrant, and as open as we can possibly be. And that's a type of energy that I grew up in, which just historically is very unique and special. So therefore, Berlin also became like a very interesting place to be and to grow up in, and because you can just experience everything and nothing there, and it never gets boring. It's very unique.
So you had a very fairy tale childhood. I've seen all the other interviews and podcasts, and for all the audience who have not seen any of these interviews and podcasts, we will put a link in below for Yogi Lab. We can do that, right? In our description field, put a link to Yogi Lab YouTube channel.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I grew up in a fairy tale childhood, and I'm super super grateful and very lucky. Then because like nowadays, and I wasn't aware of it when I was younger, but nowadays it's not the common thing that you have a healthy relationship with your parents, that they have a healthy relationship with each other,
Uh,
and the way how people communicate and treat each other in a family or in like even an extended family. We just forgot how to do that. And I got very lucky that my parents basically just had one intention, and that was to raise me with love. And that sounds so fluffy and simple, but then at the same time it is so simple because they knew they're going to make mistakes, and they're very very open and vocal about it. Like, we knew we're going to make mistakes, but if we raise you with love, we knew everything will be fine. So, in everything that they did, and the way how they interacted with me, the way how they communicated, the way how they wanted to spend time with me, there was always this idea is like, okay, how can we come from a place of love instead of ego or fear or anxiety and everything else? Um, and that's why it was such a special, unique time for me. And I'm very, very grateful that I was able to experience that.
So, because this podcast is all about connecting the paranormal and trying to find the connection between paranormal and spirituality. So, tell me your journey of spirituality. Was it because what got you into? How did you touch your spiritual side? Is it because your parents were religious or they themselves were spiritual?
Yeah. Good question. No, my parents were absolutely not religious, and they're also not like the ones that are very much into spirituality at all. But there was always a little bit of an openness. And I think when I was 17 or 18, a friend of my uncle from Hungary, she was like, back in the days, I would have described her as a little witch. because I didn't knew better. Now I know, like, okay, she was a healer. She had, like, superpowers and, like, had abilities that other people, like, that we forget. We have them all, but, like, we're just not able to access them anymore. And I had huge eczema on both arms, like really, really, really bad. Skin color, structure, everything was completely damaged. And she's like, I can help you. And her husband was translating because she doesn't speak my language. So I look at her and I could see she's powerful because she's a 70-year-old woman and the skin of her hand is very like of a 30-year-old young, vibrant, like healthy woman, right? So you can see something is different. And then she's like, I can help you. Like, I can hypnotize you. Come back tomorrow morning. So we did a hypnosis and I had a very powerful experience because one, I was lying there and I'm like, oh, this doesn't work. It's like 18, young city kid. Like I'm, open, but not really like believing in it. And it's like, this doesn't work. I'm fully conscious. I hear what she's doing. I can feel her heat. So I could feel she's doing Reiki, but she was speaking her language, Hungarian, which I don't understand.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, out of a reflex, I wanted to scratch my nose because it was tingling and I couldn't move. So I'm lying in this bed and I want to do this and I can't. I'm just like, okay, something is different. And then she stops speaking and I can feel a very intense pulsing energy going through my third eye into every little cell of my body. Like very, very intense moment. Very beautiful. And I don't know how long this was. If it was a second, if it was like for half an hour, no idea. So I completely lost relation to time. And then I fell asleep. She left. I fell asleep. And then later on, I go back down and I speak to her and I look in the eyes and I ask her, like, how have you been able to hypnotize me in your own language? And she just looks at me, she smiles, and she says, Sasha, your spirit understands every language.
Wow.
And for me, that was just jaw-dropping. And 2 weeks later, the eczema that I had, gone, never came back. And I explained to her, like, what was that feeling that I had when there was this pulsing energy going through me? And she said, this sounds so crazy for people who like don't believe in that stuff and like have never experienced anything like that. And she basically says, like, look, I went all the way back to your birth and burnt, that's the word that she used, those traumas that have been created because I had the cord around my neck when I was born.
Okay.
So that created trauma, which then ultimately manifested in those eczema on both of my arms. So yeah, she did this hypnosis. 2 weeks later, everything was gone. So that was the first very big opening to spirituality and looking a little bit beyond the Western culture, medicine, all that belief system. And then it just kept continuing. Things came into my life and I invited them. I was still skeptical, but I knew like I have my own experience. It works. So yeah.
So that is exactly what we are paranormal investigators. So like you said, so before I go ahead with that, tell me something now. With this experience that you had with this lady, how would you define spirituality for yourself? What does spirituality mean to you?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different interpretations and definitions out there. For me, very plain and simple, it's just connection to source. It's connection to myself. It is connection to like others and human beings and plants and everything else. Just feeling connected and being aware of like what's going on inside and outside. And source, other people call it universe, the next one calls it God. Like, it's just like we have a lot of different words to basically describe the same thing.
All right.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we do in the paranormal as well. Like you said, connecting to a different source. So when we do our investigations, that's what we are doing. We're connecting to something else, something different, something out of the world, something that we cannot explain. So
yeah.
Do you believe in the paranormal? Or have you ever had any kind of an experience?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, this experience that I told you right now, before that, I would say there was a little bit paranormal, right? Because that didn't seem like this is my normal reality. That didn't seem like this is something that just happens frequently everywhere. But at the same time, I was just not aware of it. Much later, here in Bali, and this sounds crazy as well, like I saw a UFO. It's not like, I was like, I always believed in people that see ghosts and they experience spirits, and I have experienced spirits myself. Um, but a UFO is like, yeah, possible. Like, how can I say it's not possible if, like, because I don't have proof. So just saying and ignoring the fact that it is potentially possible, if I'm denying that, then I feel like I'm naive. I'm just not giving any opportunity or possibilities for something greater and else in life. And then I'm running this Yogi Lab clarity workshop in Lovina in the north of Bali. And then at the end, everyone was going to bed, and I'm like, because I was hosting the whole thing, I was like, okay, needing to slow down a little bit, and I'm sitting outside, have this beautiful view to the ocean, and look down to the city and this nice villa, and then I just see this. For me, I just knew like that was not from this earth. This was not from here. It's not like I saw like a plate and it was like this like typical what you see in TVs and movies and whatnot. No, but it was like a very like insanely bright green neon light going in a completely weird way through the sky, and someone could say like, yeah, it could have been anything else. Yeah, maybe. But when you see it, you kind of know like, no, that's different.
Correct.
That's not from here, you know?
Yeah.
I've seen
So,
exorcisms. I've experienced spirits in my own body. Yeah, it's like depending on how deep you're connected with yourself, how open you are to it, and like how sensitive. That's what you do in meditation. You become like so much more sensitive to the things that are happening in your reality, and then you can experience also so much more.
City.
Sasha, yeah, I had one question relating to the last thing that you mentioned about spirituality, right? So
Yeah.
nowadays, not sure if you are aware, but a lot of these social media influencers or people that you see on the social media, right? So they speak a lot about spirituality, or they try to portray spirituality in a different light, right? Where
Yeah.
they claim that if you do so and so things, then you are actually spiritual. So I was really intrigued, and I wanted to ask you, right, that if are there certain parameters that you need to follow, or is it really necessary for you to be, spiritual to lead a healthy life, something like that?
Yeah, good question. I think we're all spiritual beings. One, that's the most important thing. And we all have very different ways of how to express that. And a lot of people, including myself and like many other people that I know, we went through our own phases of like not portraying, but like basically just looking a little bit more into that type of spirituality and like use that vocabulary and use those words and like speak the language. And I think that's quite normal. Like we're all on our path of like just becoming more and more connected with ourselves, and those are just phases. And some people like to stay there, some people like never move forward. They just like, okay, this is what it is, and that's fine. We're all so different, and we have different ways of how to express it. And if they're happy with the way how they want to portray themselves, or what they feel like, okay, this is my authentic being, then why not? So I don't think there's a right or wrong, but you can see there's a sense from quite a lot of people that it becomes a spiritual bypass. Like everything that they do in life, it just becomes like they put it into the spirituality box and don't take accountability and responsibility for their own actions at all anymore. And this is what we do different, and this is how we feel different with Yogi Lab. We're like, no, like we're taking a lot of ownership of everything that we do, the positive, the negative, the flaws that we have. Like, this is us, this is part of us, so we connect with this deeper. And if you take ownership and accountability for it, then you have a chance to like actually embrace spirituality way more for what it is, which is connection with yourself, connection with source and the universe and everything else. So you're not denying things. Does that explain your question?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool.
So there is a very thin line between being religious and being spiritual, because a lot of people mix it up. So if somebody asks me, I always say I am more spiritual than religious. It's not that I don't believe in God, but I'm more towards a different path. I believe in all.
Yeah.
How would you define it? The thin line between being religious and being spiritual.
Yeah, this is a hard question for me, a tough question for me to answer because I never grew up being religious. My parents were not religious in that type of sense. So I was never really introduced to that mindset or that lifestyle or that kind of way of living. And for me, spirituality became obviously so much bigger through the different experience that I had in life, but also just starting to do yoga and meditation. Obviously for you in India, that's like you grew up with that. That's like so normal. For us in the Western world, that was not so normal. It becomes more like the trendy now into normality. But it wasn't back in the days when I grew up. So doing yoga, doing breath work, doing meditation, those were things that helped me to go more into this path of spirituality and like living a lifestyle in a little bit more spiritual way, you know?
So, in the paranormal community, a lot of us believe that it is related. There is a direct relation between paranormal and spirituality because we are communicating, like we said earlier, to something else, to the
Yeah,
spirit, to the ghost, to the energy, to the soul, consciousness, and we're trying to
yeah,
find answers about what's after this. Is there life after that? Is there anything? And we also deal with a lot of psychic mediums who come in, and they all are tapping into their uh, spiritual part of it. So how? So what, in your opinion, I want to know is how much do you agree to this that the paranormal is interconnected or related to, or it's just another aspect of the spiritual realm?
yeah. I think, and I'm going to be curious what you say about that. I think it's basically exactly the same. The
Yeah.
paranormal are things that we can't really describe yet, and we're trying to find answers for it. And more or less, that's the same for the spiritual realm as well. There are things that we stop to connect with on a much more deeper level. And back in the days, those old tribes, they were very connected with plants, with nature, with like, the unit. It's just totally different. But the lifestyle that we live in and social media and everything else made us so disconnected. So I think the paranormal and the spiritual are very much connected with each other. But then you have to ask, like, how do you define paranormal activities and how do you define spirituality? And in my world, I explained what spirituality is, and paranormal things are basically also more or less just things that we can't really explain what it is right now. However, it's happening in our reality, so it is part of our reality. It's not paranormal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
It
makes
is part of it. We just can't explain it. And that's why it becomes like, oh, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense to us. We can't explain it. There's no definition behind it. So we need to frame it as something specific. It's the same as spirituality. There are things that are like, oh wow, all those things are happening and I can't explain it. So okay, that's spiritual. That's like higher source, universe, God, but ultimately it's all part of our reality. It's all part of what we live and experience and breathe. So I think it's very much connected.
Yeah, Sasha. So one question from me. So at times, what we have seen is even when we are using our equipments to conduct a research on this field, right? There are certain times when a lot of people either get offended or they tag us as we not being spiritually uh, enlightened to conduct these researches without our equipment or without taking help from some external source. So, like, what would be your point of view on this particular situation?
Explain to me what are they getting offended by?
The thing is, they sometimes they tell us that you should be independent, or you should use your own body and mind to conduct such research or to find out the answers in this particular field. So
Yeah,
they are offended by the fact that we actually use or we depend on gadgets and equipments to
yeah,
get our answers.
yeah. For me, it's like if those technologies are available, why not use them? you know it's the same thing, like you can go very deep into meditation and have like very powerful experiences, and see things that you otherwise cannot see, which is just, it's also a technology, like the technique of the Buddha. Like if you use Vipassana, which is like one of our big things, it's basically, it's also a technique. You know, technology techniques, it's like, now if you use those techniques, technologies, they're man-made, right? Is that correct? So like they come out of our mind, of our genius, so why should we not be able to use them? You know, if there's like a legitimacy behind it, that there makes sense and that you can use them and they give you like quality results, then I don't personally see any issues. Why not? You know, why would we deny things that could potentially bring us closer to truth?
So, but here's what happens with us. So, even though we have our gadgets to prove, and we have collected proof of the paranormal, we still get a we still get a lashback, say that it's not real, and you could have faked it. Does that happen in when you're sitting and explaining spirituality or getting people involved? Do you have to sit and prove yourself, or do you ever come across or get questioned? How can you prove it?
Yeah. But of course it can happen a lot. You know, you can have a very deep, powerful meditation and see things and like integrate those things, and like, yeah, but how can you prove this is really the case and that this is true? It's like, you cannot. But then at the same time, I don't think you have to prove anything. Like if you believe it, and the people who believe in you and the things that you do, those are your people. The people who don't believe in, like, okay, you don't have to. You know, I'm not trying to convert you. I'm not trying to tell you this is right or this is wrong. This is our evidence. This is what we do. This is what we found out. Those are the tools that we need, that we used. And now make up your own mind. This is our conclusion. This is our resolution out of this. You know, you don't have to believe any of it. Do your own research. You know, a lot of people, I think they're always like, I don't believe this, and this is not true, and how can you prove that, and da-da-da. Then just do your own research. Instead of just like nagging and be negative, then do something, you know? So I think those people, they're not willing to open up their mind to explore and experience a little bit more that is outside of their box, you know? But there's so much.
There's so much more to it than
Yeah.
what they are just saying. Tell me something. When we go for investigations, we have certain protocols, right? You you don't drink, you don't smoke, and nothing like that. You know, right before when you go, because it affects your mind. So, do you think that habits, addiction, like if you're drug addict or drinking, smoking, sex, or whatever, do you think that affects a person's spiritual levels of spirituality, or it does
Absolutely.
find it difficult?
No, yeah, absolutely. You know, I think if you think about alcohol or any other, like usually drugs are depressants. They bring you down. They lower your energy. Meditation heightens your energy. It brings you higher. You know, you're going into different stages of vibrations. But if you take a lot of drugs, then you lower your energy, you lower your frequencies, you lower your vibrations, which is basically also what you track in those paranormal things, right? Or spiritual things, like you work with vibrations and frequencies and energies and like the things that you feel inside and see outside. And if you are a drug addict, of course, like you're numbing yourself, you're numbing your own system and your own spirit, and basically disconnect a little bit more with yourself.
Yeah.
So then experiencing those spiritual realms is also going to be so much more difficult, you know?
So, talking about vibrations, since you picked up the topic of vibrations, now with whatever's happening in the world now, yeah, with the pandemic and the COVID, there's that fear which is set in people. Do you think now, with this fear which is there, so much fearful energy in the atmosphere, do you think that has tilted the scales of spirituality? And do you see people more becoming spiritual or getting into spirituality because now they want to find more answers, because everything is very they don't know what's going to happen, there are no answers.
Yeah, exactly. And often we put our lives and our everything into someone else's hands. Oh, let the government government handle it. Let like other people, let my boss handle it. Now you're in a position you kind of have to take care of your own self. And you also often have a little bit more time at hand, so you can dive a little bit more deeper within yourself, so that allows us to, like, with all the pandemic, and it's obviously extremely hard for a lot of people all around the world. Like, the economy is like hurting a lot. But on the flip side of things, it also allows us to get a little bit closer and back to who we are and what we want, and basically connect with our inner wisdom, because that's where all the answers are. So I think with all the negative that's happening in the world, there are positive sides as well, and it's our choice if we want to look at the negative only, or if we want to also invite the positive in.
How do you guide a person who wants to get in touch with the spiritual side?
I mean, there are many of different things. Sometimes it's as simple as just like changing the mindset, just the perspective on certain things. Then obviously you want to integrate that with spiritual practices like yoga, like meditation, like breath work, like even very simple things like journaling and stuff. You can work with NLP trainings just to like really go into the subconscious. So there are many routines, morning and evening routines, like enhancing your sleep and the sleep qualities. There's so many things that we can do in order to be more connected with who we are and how we want to show up in the world.
How does Vipassana help in getting in touch with your spiritual part? Because for everybody, explaining Vipassana is a little difficult. So my one word for them is meditate. And when I tell people that I do Vipassana, so they have that, oh, you do? Really? How is it going? It is so difficult. It is difficult.
Yeah.
I'm not denying that. It's very hard, and you just want to give up sometimes, But then I've stuck with Vipassana twice with you guys, and it has really changed my perspective. And I have shared a lot with you about how the second time that I started with Vipassana, how it has been different for me. So how do you think Vipassana would help people in getting in touch?
Okay, I'll speak from my own experience because I've done many Vipassanas myself now too. Every time I've done Vipassana, it changed my life. So in terms of the struggle and that it is so hard, if you think about like, well, it's going to change your life for the better, and it's only 10 days of pain and like, going through like challenges, 10 days, and it's going to change your life for the better. Is that worth it? Yes, it is, right? On a more detailed answer, like, silence is golden. We're so bombarded by media, and like we're so programmed by how society and governments and schools tell us what to do and how to think and like where to go and what not to do. It's like we can't even like properly think for ourselves anymore. And then we have those guys here, which make it way more difficult because, it's just like so easy to distract ourselves. Now, all of a sudden, you have to sit for 120 hours in 10 days in silence. You not go on your phone. You don't talk to anyone. You don't speak. You don't like listen. You don't write. Like you're just like whatever comes up. And there's a lot that obviously comes up. And you can probably talk about that. There's a lot of like internal stuff that comes up in those 10 days. All we can do is just sit with it. We need to see it. We need to feel it. We need to observe it. And we need to like basically start to transmute it. And that's the power. If instead of me sitting with my feelings, I'm using my phone again to distract myself, I'm never really going to access deeper levels of myself.
Right.
So in that case, as hard as Vipassana is, it is also extremely beautiful. And then what the Buddha teaches is like, it's two main things, right? It's like, one, how to master your mind. Because if I tell my mind, focus on your breath, Sasha, and don't do anything else, just focus on your breath. And I can't even do this for 30 seconds because my mind just goes everywhere and like thinks about other things, what I have to do today. And like, I have this podcast and like, I can't even focus for 2 minutes on my breath, even though I'm telling my breath to do that. then I'm basically not in control of my mind.
Correct.
So just that in itself, if I'm learning to be in control of my mind, and Vipassana does that, it gives me that ability and technique to do that, extremely powerful. And then the next part is obviously like experience reality as it is, not as we think it is and want it to be. You know, you actually go on way, way deeper levels. And that's why I think Vipassana is such a powerful tool.
So that's my experience with Vipassana, like I had shared with you personally as well. Nothing ever actually came up emotional wise, but
Yeah.
I told you and I discussed that I used to get a lot of these flashes and images. So I'm still trying to figure out what it is, and I think I'm going to share it with you because I've made a journal out of it and I told you about it. So I was just sitting and thinking, what are those flashes? What are those images? What are those visions that I'm getting? Is it my past life? Is it something in future? Because there is people that I have never seen in my life. There are faces that I've never seen, and they look so ancient. So
Yeah.
Vipassana, I think for everyone is pretty different. Don't you agree?
You know, like, one, I cannot answer that for you because I don't know. You know, I don't know what you see and what you experience. And two, what Dave would say is like, don't try to make sense of it.
Correct.
Just accept it as it is. It's there, but like stay with your practice. And the more deeper you go with the practice, all those things will become more clear for you. So trying to make sense out of it without having all the answers and all the information is like you're already deviating from reality. Just accept it as it is. That's it. That's what Dave would say, I think.
I know, I know, because I think, addressed it to Dave, and he told me the exact same thing. Uh,
Yeah.
to just don't think about it too much. So
Right.
anyway, that's for the Vipassana part. Now, if somebody wants to get in touch with you guys for Vipassana, how can they do
Yeah.
that? Of course, we'll put the links in the description in our YouTube channel and everything. But if you
So
want
the
to,
Yeah, sorry. So the easiest way to reach us is either through yogilab.com or vipassanaonline.com. All the information are there. Every month from the 11th to the 22nd, the two power numbers, we're running an online Vipassana retreat with Dave as the host that we've recorded here in Bali. And he's a meditation master. You obviously, you sat with him a few times, so you know like how powerful it is and
absolutely.
what kind of modern approach. It's so deep, but it's so modern and relatable, and like there's just so much wisdom that he shares. And the whole idea why we do this is because we've experienced the power of Vipassana ourselves. We know how much it has transformed and changed our lives for the better, and we just believe everyone in this world should have access to it.
True.
Everyone in the world should know the technique or should be able to have access to the technique so they can integrate it into their lives. Because what it does is like it gives us your own power and sovereignty back. And that's the whole goal behind it.
And I want to say congratulations for 100,000 meditators. That is so
Yes.
amazing. I saw that on the
Yes.
website and I was so happy. I'm like, wow, that's great. Um,
Yes. It's powerful, 100,000, more than 100,000 signups already within, I don't know, 7, 8 months. Like we're very, very happy. We're far away from our goal, but we're very happy,
how much time do we have left?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, next
10
10-15 minutes
10
maximum.
minutes?
10,
So
15
we'll do
maybe.
quick, Sasha, we'll make it
Rapid fire.
fun now. We'll make it a little fun from the serious talks. We'll do a quick rapid fire. Okay?
Okay.
Just fun stuff. Okay? Nothing about spirituality or paranormal thing. And it's rapid and it has to be fiery. Okay? So I have
Okay.
Okay, so first question, a very cliched and obvious question. If you were deserted on an island, but you had all the food and water for you, what are the other two things that you would take along with you?
What I would take to the island with me?
Yeah, if you were deserted, but you have food and water with you, besides food and water, what are the two things that you would like to have with you on your island?
A beautiful partner, actually a family.
Two
If
things.
I have a family with me, it's two. Like it needs a wife and it needs a kid, right? So it's two.
Okay,
If not only that, then I want a fire.
fire.
Yes.
Okay, so if you had a choice between two superpowers, invisibility or flying, which one would you choose?
Invisibility.
What would you be as an animal? What animal would you be?
Probably an eagle.
An eagle. So you
Yeah.
can fly.
Yeah.
Texting or talking?
Depends. Talking.
Keep that in mind, okay? For the next, keep that in mind. The nickname your parents call you as.
Song.
Favorite day of the week. Sasha rap fire. You can't say
Monday.
the last song you downloaded.
Oh, I don't download songs, but my favorite song is Near Light by Olafur Arnalds.
Okay. Favorite holiday.
Favorite holiday in Bali.
As in seasonal. Christmas, New Year's. What kind of holiday?
Oh, okay. My birthday in Bali.
Okay. How long does it take for you to get ready?
5 minutes.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, like, it depends on what. Like, I wake up and I meditate for an hour, but then ultimately, if I need to get up, it takes me 5 minutes.
Your first celebrity crush.
My first what?
Your first celebrity crush. What celebrity? Crush on?
Probably Jessica Alba.
Good one.
She was young back then, okay?
Dawn or dusk?
Dusk.
Cake or pie?
Cake.
Bali or Berlin?
Tough one, but Bali.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Pistachio.
Say a word in German.
Hallo. That's too long. Schmetterling.
What does that mean?
Butterfly. That's like the typical word that no one wants to talk about because it's like so like not sexy. Butterfly is like so sweet, and Schmetterling is like the opposite.
Favorite number?
6.
Favorite color?
White.
Sandals or sneakers?
Sneakers.
Of course. I love for sneakers. Okay. Would you rather cuddle a baby panda or a baby penguin?
Baby panda or baby
Penguin.
panda?
Okay. What your favorite type of muffin? You better answer this properly.
My favorite type of muffin?
Yeah.
Blueberry.
Thank you. Giving presents or getting presents?
Giving.
Climb a mountain, swing from a tree, or jump from a plane?
Jump from the plane.
Really? I thought swing
Yeah.
from a tree.
Yeah, I've done that.
Favorite movie?
Any Given Sunday.
Favorite movie? What's that movie?
Movie, yeah. Any Given Sunday. It's an American football movie. I love it.
Favorite beverage?
Over. Favorite beverage? Right now, green tea. Iced green tea.
Iced green tea. Favorite dessert?
Chocolate fondant.
Right side of the bed or left side of the bed?
Depends on the bed. There's no right or left. It really depends on the room. I can't say. In the middle, like everywhere.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Yoga or meditation?
Meditation.
Villa or tree house?
Villa.
Jungle or city?
Jungle.
Of course. I knew that answer. Do we have one?
But I love the city.
You love the city?
I love the city.
Do we have one? Do we have time for one more question?
I have
Yes,
time
sir.
for one more question for you, of course.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So, the Sasha who lives now in Bali, how is he different from the Sasha who was in Berlin?
The biggest difference is now living a life of purpose. You know, like I had a great life in Berlin and I have a great life here, but now the mission that we have is just so much bigger. and the connection that I have with myself, you know, the connection with like source and spirituality and like diving in all those techniques, just allows me to be much more of a whole human being. And before that, I was a great human being and I did a bunch of things, but that like living on purpose and having like a clear, straight mission, that was not there.
So you're a father now, okay? And as a parent, do you think it is important for parents to start inculcating the importance of spirituality in the children from a very young age and help them explore their life at a young age, or should we wait?
Yes and no. I think what we do is, you know, mommy, for example, she does just in front of him a lot of yoga. Like, so he just becomes a yogi. So it's not like we need to talk to him. It's just like showing him, introducing him to those things. For me, like he wakes up in the morning and he sees me meditating. So
Yeah.
he gets introduced to this, and if there's a desire and a curiosity, and he starts asking questions, then obviously there's an opening to dive deeper. I don't think it's necessary to tell people, you know, like more like in a forceful way, introducing them to those kind of things. That can happen like very naturally because kids are so curious. And if you have that ability within yourself to have that curiosity, then they will automatically develop that for themselves too. So I think the best way how to use spirituality in any kind of shape of way or form to your kids is just like lead by example, be that role model for them.
Is there anything else you want to ask?
No, that was about it. So thanks a lot, Sasha, for
Sasha, thank you
you know.
so much for being
Yep.
with us and coming on the podcast with us. You're our first guest, and I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this as much as we did. And for all the audience, if they have any questions for Sasha or for any of us, please leave them down in our comments section. And Sasha, if you have any questions from our audience, can we get back to you for you to answer them?
Of course, you can just text me, no problem, and then we'll try to answer them in our best of capabilities.
All right.
And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
I wish you guys good luck with the new podcast series. Like, this is pretty cool. I love the combination of it, and obviously you two are super awesome. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thanks, Sasha. See you soon.
Bye, guys.
Take care.